Happy New Year to you all, and this is the first lecture of 2016, which is 14th Institute lecture, and I welcome each one of you to this lecture on behalf of the Institute Lecture Series Committee and on behalf of the Institute. We are extremely privileged to have Dr. Virender Kumar Raina, whose detailed introduction will be given by Professor Devendra Mohan, Head Civil. May I request Dr. Raina and Professor Sandhu to please come on dais. While coming to dais, I'll request them to garland Malviya ji's bust.
जरूरी है सर, यही सबसे बड़ा काम है सर. इससे पहले तो सर ये बड़ा कम मौका मिला होगा आपको.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, please have a seat.
After becoming Indian Institute of Technology, we have started one institute lecture series. So far, we have had 16, this will be the 16th lecture in it. 2 of them were non-institute lecture, and this is 14th institute lecture. We do have a motto of educate to innovate and innovate to change. And today's speaker is probably one of the perfect example of that. You will see when he delivers his lecture. We are again proud because he is one of our alumnus, a distinguished alumnus who has contributed meaningfully to the world of structures, specifically to bridges. Some of his works might be available in YouTube of discovery. We now request Head Civil Engineering, Professor Devendra Mohan, to kindly introduce the speaker of today. Professor Mohan, please.
Honorable Director, Honorable Speaker for the 14th lecture in ILS, all esteemed colleagues of the dais, dear students, ladies and gentlemen, I am thankful to Professor Sarma and the committee of the Institute Lecture Series for giving me an opportunity to introduce a very illustrious alumni of presently called IIT BHU, erstwhile one of its constituent colleges, that is Banaras Engineering College. As I mentioned, I just repeat once again, I feel very, very happy while I put forward before this August gathering a few introductory words about one of these illustrious alumni, Dr. Virender K. Raina, who is 14th speaker in this Institute Lecture Series. As a matter of fact, in professional world, Dr. Raina does not need an introduction. Dr. Raina was born on January 25th, 1940, and he had his Bachelor of Science in Civil and Municipal Engineering from Banaras Engineering College, Banaras Hindu University in 1961. We know that afterwards this Banaras Engineering College and other 2 constituent colleges merged together to form Institute of Technology, Banaras Hindu University, which afterwards got converted or upgraded into Indian Institute of Technology, Banaras Hindu University. Dr. Raina broke the university record by standing first as well as first class naturally, and for a long time university record was broken by his outstanding performance in BSc Engineering. Dr. Raina had his master degree, that is MS, in 1964 and PhD in 1966 through a highly esteemed Commonwealth scholarship which was granted by the government of Great Britain from the renowned Imperial College London in England. His association has been very prestigious, like BIC, MIC, EC Engineering from London, and Association of Professional Engineers, Ontario, Canada. He is recipient of highly prestigious S.V. Joshi citation and award for the best bridge and structural engineer of 2010. Currently he is director at ITNL, which belongs to IL and FS group, and he is there as director from January 1, 2009.
Slight correction. I'm no more there. I'm now with the World Bank for the last 2 years.
Okay, CV में वैसा था sir. Okay.
That will look.
According to CV, it was okay. He has corrected it. Thank you, sir. At present, he is also working as consultant to the World Bank for training the engineers of the Assam Public Works and Roads Department in the state of Assam under the ASRP World Bank Finance Project. He has been consultant and senior expert to other such organizations like African Development Bank and other many global organizations. He is Professor Emeritus as a very old, more than a century old College of Engineering at Pune, Maharashtra. He has worked as a senior expert and consultant with the United Nations as well as the World Bank for many years in a large number of countries. He has also worked as a consultant to the private sector as well as to various governments in different countries around the globe. He has also worked as technical advisor to the government of Bahrain for completion of Bahrain-Qatar Sea Link Bridge. It's a bridge, very long bridge in sea itself connecting Bahrain and Qatar. 40 kilometer long bridge in the sea. He has very rich experience of working in more than 18 countries, as I mentioned earlier, and has authored highly acclaimed engineering books, 9 in number. His total number of publications are around 80. This is in nutshell about this great personality whom we are going to listen as today's speaker in our institute lecture series. Sir, all of us feel thankful that you have spared your valuable time to share your knowledge and experience with us. Now I request you to please start your lecture. Thank you very much, sir.
Good evening, ladies and there is a lady I thought somewhere. Am I right or wrong? Or am I seeing things? Anyway, I was born in November 1940, not January, and I'm no more with the ILFS. That was long back, and perhaps he has been able to see my old CV. That's fine, but I'm so grateful for all the kind words. I hope I'll be able to live up to the expectations of you all. There are two major sea links. One is a 26 kilometer long one connecting Bahrain and Saudi, which is completed, right from negotiations through investigations, through analysis, design, construction, supervision, maintenance and everything. The other one is a 40 kilometer long, the one that connects, or is proposed to connect Bahrain with Qatar. 40 kilometers. That is still in the stage of construction. Anyway, that apart. Today, what I'm going to talk to you about, we had mentioned that we'll be talking about the recent Nepal earthquakes and the infrastructure issues there too. That we have decided, I think you're going to mention that about tomorrow morning. Yes. That will be tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock? Yeah. Where? Here? Here. Wherever you decide. Here only. So, but today we will talk a little about a brief history of development of bridges and structure of concrete. Now, I will very quick, I was told the director he has to go somewhere at 5:15 or something. So just about that time I'll quickly show the last few slides which are of extreme interest, and then you can proceed. Very quickly, bridge design and construction have come a long way during the past few centuries, and much, as they say, water has flowed down, particularly in the past 100 years or so, during which more bridges have been built than in all the previous centuries. The primitive bridge building perhaps started with a trial and error process, as can be expected. In some misty morning of prehistoric past, a human trying to cross a stream probably saw a fallen tree across it, and when he tried to perhaps clamber over it, it might have broken and dropped him in the drink. So he thought really hard and felled a fatter tree. Remember the word fatter, tree. And this took him across the stream. That day, the first primitive single-span wooden beam bridge was thus conceived, designed and built. That's long, long ago. That might have been the case. Likewise, the first arch bridge too was built probably similar. If you read the history of civil engineering, it is fascinating, and you will see a lot of this background. The first arch bridge too was built probably similarly about 4,000 years ago in the Euphrates Valley of Mesopotamia, present-day Iraq. Over the past 125 years or so, the understanding of structure behavior unfolded cascadingly. Master analysts like Navier, Dischinger, Timoshenko, Goodyear, then subsequently Taroha, Morandi, Guillaume, these giants, the likes of whom engineering world had never seen, came on the scene. And the tools for structure analysis sharpened, strength of materials began to be understood better, and the art and science of structure analysis and design took roots. Meanwhile, better construction materials developed and advanced, from stone to timber to brick to wrought iron to cast iron to mild steel to reinforced concrete to high-strength steel to composite construction and to pre-stressed concrete. And accordingly, spans began to become longer as we progressed into higher strength steel, high tensile steel, and high strength concrete. That the flexural strength, we're talking of history, so we have to see the turning points. That the flexural strength of a section was proportional to the cube of its depth, but only linearly to its width, was perhaps one of the greatest revelations ever in understanding the structure efficiency. Width versus depth. To trace the glorious history of bridges from the beginning, we should perhaps divide it into two periods, as it is customary to talk about history in terms of periods. The first period would be before concrete, the stone to steel age, and the second, the one in which we are living, is the one after concrete was born. Stone and timber were the traditional building materials since the start of civilization. Stone arches used mostly in early bridges date back to the days of Babylon. Romans learned the art of building arches from the Etruscans. These arches were semicircular. Flat arcular arches appeared in full glory during the Renaissance period. Although the first theory of arches came to be established as late as 1695 and was used in practical design only in 1729, the optimum profile of the stone arch had been found very early by artist builders intuitively and has changed very little since, because the line of thrust. Sequence of arches as they were then, and even now we copy them, sequence of arches, wide pairs do look definitely better than the narrow ones. Sequence of flat 2-hinged arches. Back in 1502, this is important, back in 1502, the great man, the Sultan Bezezet, whatever, of Turkey, he was a visionary. He wanted to cross the 240-meter gap between Istanbul and Pera across the waters, and he wanted a single-span structure. He could think of nobody better than Leonardo da Vinci, the great, great master. His services were requisitioned. He came, he saw, he investigated, he drew his sketches, took his money and went back home. It was agreed that this will be built. But this visionary, Sultan, he gave up the idea because he didn't find the technology of the day to be able to construct something of 240-meter single span with the construction methods and materials available then. So the whole project was given up. The sketches got lost. This is 1500 something. It's only about 452 years later, in 1950 something, that an art critic by the name Sands, he was an art critic, he attended the exhibition of Leonardo da Vinci's sketches and drawings. And he saw these sketches, he fell in love with them, bought them, took them to his friend who was a civil engineer and explained to him. They both liked it, they went to the authorities, convinced the authorities, and then as recently as 2000 something, they built a footbridge across E18, Expressway 18, connecting between between Copenhagen and something I'll explain to you. It's in wood. It's been built by the Mughal group, the timber specialists, and they have vowed that they will build this kind of bridge in all the continents. Now, Sultan Bezajat, I was mentioning, Webb John Sand was the name, and then he met his friend. This is what they have built. Now, in this you can see the direction of flow of stresses. You know, you can measure strains, you cannot measure stress. Be clear about that. Nobody can measure stress. You can measure strains. But you can see the direction of the flow of these stress trajectories, and the placement of the load masses is absolutely to the last single cubic centimeter. We were given the job at Imperial to do a 3D final element on this, done. And we found that the material used was so exact, and this is 500 years odd back. Now this is something like the pearl of perfection, and this is across, this was in 2001, E18, across in the town named AS. And this was between Oslo and Sweden. And Webb John Sands was the name. Selberg, Kunet Selberg was the architect whom he took the sketch to, and ultimately it was built by the Mughal group, 100-meter span. Now this is something else. But if you trace the history, they wanted to cross wide crossings. There was no technology to do that, so they had the idea of building 3-tier arches. The first one you can see is doing what, the second one sits on top of this, the third one takes it over shorter spans. They took the aqueduct with a road surface on top across the big water body without today's modern technology of either design, analysis, design or construction. This is the famous Pont du Gard near Nimes, road, bridge and aqueduct. Then this, again old one, this is the family of stone arches across the Seine in Paris. You can see the harmony, you can see the environmental invasion is nil, and it blends so well with the background. Then you have this famous Loire Bridge in Blois in France again. Very simple, but see the beauty of without interfering with the background. Then this one, Pont du Clerc, or the Lot River, 2-hinged arches. Incidentally, I was also in Pakistan. When I showed this, the minister who was an engineer, I don't know where he is now, Afghanistan probably, he said, how is this? Is it a 2-storied bridge, one below, one on top? It's just a reflection. It's a good photograph, that's all. Then we have this famous Professor Maynard across the Salina Gorge in Switzerland, 1930, reinforced concrete, hinged arch, 2-hinged arch. This is, we have to see it and you just fall on your knees when you look at it. It is absolutely music frozen in space. It just so very nicely fits the background, and you can imagine when it is all snows, how beautiful it must look. 90-meter span, 1930, Professor Robert Maillard, Switzerland. Then you have subsequently engineer Christian Men. He's built this Viamala Bridge. He's one of the greatest analysts of the modern times. Now, he had this job and he built an arch. He analyzed, designed and detailed and built this arch, supervised the construction, which blends so well with the background. You compare that with the monstrosities we have in Delhi. You will close your eyes when you come to Delhi and see them. Now see how there was once a study conducted by the World Bank, the effect on the human psyche of the hundreds of flyovers, concrete monsters that are being built in the urban ambience. And the result was that when you look at things like what you see in Delhi, it is almost certain that it will reduce the lifespan of those who look at it every day, compared to those like these which will increase your lifespan. It is as simple as that. Right now I am working on a project which is climate change effect on bridges. Climate change effect on bridges. And we did design the Saudi Bahrain for 30 centimeter rise in sea level. We did everything, it's built, but it is wrong. Today the estimate is upwards of 1 meter. But this is all conjecture, nobody really can analyze that. But be that as it may. Then you have this Rio, Canimar in Cuba. Now Cuba, as you know, is very humid and very warm. There is no winter. They wanted the bridge which would give you the feeling of openness, you can breathe, no claustrophobia. So you see how the structural elements were put to the good use so that you never get that feeling. It looks all open. But this is one major step in the development of the history of bridges. And go on saying, there's a lot I will show you. This was a competition. It's in the island of Kirk in ex-Yugoslavia. Now Yugoslavia has broken into 3 countries. I was there for almost a year. This was a competition. They wanted to build these connections between one side and the other. I don't know if it works. Yes. Oh, I don't, yeah. Yes. So, I can't work with this. This side to that side, this was a global competition. The idea was not to hurt the environment and to make it look that would just beautifully fit the background. And this competition, this is a photograph taken by air. You can see how beautifully it fits in. It just merges with the background of the rocks. It is not just you start your calculations and analysis, you have to do a lot on environment and on the aesthetics part, which is because these will be things that will be left for centuries. Well, one hopes for at least a century, if not longer. While stone and timber remained the common building materials for bridges, the mid-19th century demanded stronger and bigger bridges over the large rivers for railways. So around 1840, the transition from timber to steel began. In this period, cast iron and later wrought iron was tried out by bridge builders. Now cast iron being reasonably good in compression but no good in tension, this could not allow longer spans. Later, when wrought iron was brought into existence, the two were combined so that wrought iron could give you tensile members so you could go in for longer spans. This is another big step in the history of development of bridges. And the first recorded use of iron, the word is iron here, not steel, in bridges was a chain bridge built in 1734 by the German army across the Oder River in Prussia. However, cast iron was not found very suitable for building large span bridges due to its low tensile strength, as I just mentioned, and a combination of cast iron for compression members and wrought iron for tension members. This was used for truss bridges in 1840. And in 1856, just about 1 year before the War of Independence in this country, you are feeling very sleepy. I can see you yawning. I can see all your gullet. Please don't do that. In 1856, Bessemer patented a process for making large quantities of steel. This gave the fillip to the construction of bridges for long spans. And then followed by Simons and Martin, they introduced the open hearth process. In the last part of the 19th century, the new material, steel, caught the imagination of the bridge builders. And the first of fourth, first means a finger of sea going inland. That's the first in Scottish language, which is not exactly English language. And Forth is the name of the place. So that place, a bridge was to be built across the Firth. This was a cantilever bridge of 520 meter span. Or then there was the Brooklyn Bridge, Roybelling Suspension Bridge of 490 meters in New York. These were a few of the famous achievements in the 19th century to mark the beginning of modern era of bridges in steel. This is the Firth of Forth Bridge. When you see it broadside on, it speaks to you. You can see the flow of stresses. You can see it is simply telling you how it is built. It's a cantilever construction simply supported, believe it or not. Then subsequently, a new bridge has been built, which is by the side, and I have tried to take a slide which will merge the two so you can see the old and the new. You can see the two in the lower. This one I make a mistake. I don't know whether I'm able to do it right or not. Yes, this is the one I was just telling you. This is the new one that's been built. The old and the new together. And this is the old one, and this is that old one. This is the new one. This is the old and the new of the Firth Road. I would like to spend a little more time, but I don't have time. The director has to leave. Then this is the new Forth Road Bridge in Scotland. In the background you see the old one. Now one thing I want you to remember and mark, because we will be coming back to this, in the suspension bridge we have these monsters called, these are steel girders essentially to control the aerodynamic behavior or misbehavior of the bridge. These ugly steel trusses, they can be 30, 40 feet, 10, 12, 15 meters deep. And in fact, later Professor Raina surmised that they are actually bad because they collect the wind force at the nodal points, which further displaces it against the aerodynamic stability. But be that as it may, we'll come to this, and you can see the suspenders are all vertical. Now, you remember this. These are all, as usual in a suspension bridge. The later, I'll come to that, the later tendency is to incline the suspenders so that you can get the effect of the truss action from them as well for the stability of the bridge. I'll explain that. Just hold on. By the turn of the 19th century, the growing use and availability of structural steel and greater skill in analysis, in design and in construction methods paved the way for longer span bridges. Multiple span girder bridges, arch bridges and cantilever bridges in steel reached very long spans with comparative ease then. Howrah Bridge, our own, 1943, designed by Rendell Palmer and Tritton of England, a steel cantilever bridge with a total length of 457 meters, is a typical example of the large crop of outstanding bridges built in steel in the earlier years of the last century, but it is a bewildering mass. It is optimal quantity-wise. Some people like its shape, some people don't like. It is an absolute bewildering mass because it carries rail traffic, road traffic, millions of people. You have to see it to believe it. Many of you must have seen it. A very substantial advance in the understanding of the theoretical analysis of the load response of the structural system of suspension bridges was made by the 20s of the last century. Many elegant bridges were built, like Lindenthal's Manhattan Bridge 1909 with 450-meter span, followed by Steinmann's 340-meter span Florianopolis Bridge in South America, and the Delaware River Bridge of 530-meter span in 1926, to name only a few. By the way, Steinmann's bridge of 340 meters that he was given the commission to do the analysis, design, detailing, and then supervise the construction. But as a student at New York, this was the very bridge that was his project, which he submitted and got his letters. Then later, in practice, he was given the same bridge to actually do which he did, and I will show you that. The big leap forward came in 1931 with the construction of the George Washington Bridge in New York City, which has been acclaimed by no less than the great Stussy, one of the very great engineers. He said of this bridge, he said, and this is translated from French, the most important step in the evolution of art and culture of bridge engineering. This is exact translation, therefore it suffers a little bit, but I didn't want to touch it. It is exactly the translation of what he has said. And then the great Le Corbusier, who has designed Chandigarh, who was his friend, he was so enchanted with this bridge of George Washington, the George Washington Bridge, that in his 1937 publication, which was titled When Cathedrals Were White, he quipped, "The George Washington Bridge is the most beautiful bridge in the world. It is blessed. It's the seat of grace." Such comments coming from these big legends. This bridge broke the 1,000-meter span barrier, and its span length of 1,060 was double that of Delaware Bridge, which was 540, the then longest span in the world. The bridge was built by Amann, a Swiss engineer who migrated to America in 1904. Another great bridge engineer, master builder, master designer. 3 decades later, this foremost bridge builder in the world contributed his last great masterpiece to the land of his adoption states, named Verrazano Narrows Bridge. Amann's Verrazano Narrows Bridge in New York was opened in 1964, 10 months before he died, standing with a main span of 1,300 meters. The bridge is a landmark in the history of long-span suspension bridges. And this is the bridge. But you can see the stiffening trusses here as well, which are not, which nowadays people don't do. But I'll come to that because it's history we're talking. The lessons in ensuring the aerodynamic stability were learnt in a hard way by the tragedy of the 855-meter Tacoma Narrows Bridge, which fluttered and perished in 1940 in a 64-kilometer-per-hour wind. After we're done, because the director has to go, I would like to show you a small clip, video clip of that actual failure. And the reason is not that people were ready to see it fall. They had gone there to enjoy their holiday. It used to flutter in the slowest of the winds. It crashed into the Sound. Sound is a lake. At a wind speed of only 64 kilometers, 40 miles per hour. But it used to do this all the time. It was nicknamed Dancing Gertie. Gertie is the name of the girl. People used to go there on Sundays, have their beer, have their sandwiches and take photographs. And one day this happened and the wind crossed that and the whole thing came crashing down. You might have seen, but I like to show you, if I can, at the end, the video clip of the actual failure of the entire long bridge. This is only a part of that. This is the end part of it. I'll show you that because I have it. I'll copy it and show you later. This is the one which I will show you. Professor Leonhardt, the great man, Fritz Leonhardt, he worked under Hitler and built a lot of bridges for him, but he claimed all the time that he had nothing to do with the Third Reich. But a great analyst, a greater designer, the greatest detailer. He is the one who proved that detailing in the drawing is much more important than all the analysis in the world. His idea was to prevent the creation of wind forces which cause the dangerous oscillations and not to counter them by putting this additional stiffness by these big stiffening trusses, which even increase the wind loads at their nodal points. This can be realized by aerodynamic, that's the aerofoil shaping of the bridge deck cross section, so that the wind stream hitting it broadside on cannot form the eddies. And this is the great man, died. Simultaneously, the reaction forces caused by the wind, the static wind loads, can be reduced considerably. The dangerous torsional elements of the oscillation can further be prevented by suspending the deck from one cable, monocable suspension bridges. That was his idea. In fact, a consortium of European contractors took the design of Leonhardt and Krupp and gave the design for the bridge across River Tagus in Lisbon, Portugal. I'll show you, I keep jumping across. The first design of such a completely new type of suspension bridge deck, monocable with inclined suspenders so that he could get the truss reactions also to stabilize it, was made in 1960 for the Tagus Bridge in Lisbon and tendered for by a consortium of European construction firms. But the 1104-meter suspension span bridge was, however, built the usual way using the stiffening trusses. The reason was that the government officers were all having the same old mindset. And I said this morning, don't ever join government service if you want to be an engineer. Don't ever. This is his famous monocable suspension bridge with aerodynamically shaped deck section across Tagus, Lisbon, 1960. You can see the inclined suspenders and monocable. This is the cross section, and you can see at the two ends, the cross section, the wind hits it broadside on. It has got sharp, almost sharp noses that does not let the eddies form. This was the Leonhardt Krupp Lohmer design for the Rhine Bridge in Emmerich in 1961, another similar one. This is the Severn Bridge, Wales. Wales is UK, not England. England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland. These are four different things. Wales' first suspension bridge of the modern type. This was the one built not with monocable, two cables, but no stiffening trusses. And cross-section of the deck of the superstructure had sharp noses to bring the wind and not to let the eddies form. And that's the cross-section. You can begin to see what I was saying. This is the Tagus, which was built the old way, which is this. This is previously there was just only one, Bosporus across Marmaris at Istanbul in Turkey. Now there's another bridge already existing by the side of it, and third one is now under construction. Again, without the stiffening trusses, the new ones. Humber, England, 1410. No stiffening trusses, but you can see the cables. If you can see, can you see them? Not very much, not in this slide. Then this was again a step in the bridge building. As I said, we're talking of history. We're not talking today either of analysis or of design or of detailing or of drawings or of quantities or of costs or of contracts. We're talking of the history, which is this. The famous or the infamous Hyatt Regency walkway collapse in the USA. The Hyatt Regency Hotel walkway collapse was a major disaster that occurred on July 17, 1981 in Kansas City, Missouri, killing 114 people on the very first day, which was the dancing, which was the tea dance. Tea dance was being held, and injuring more than 200 others during a tea dance. That's why it's one of the stepping stones. This is what happened. Then this is the collapse of the Seongsu Bridge, South Korea, October 21, 1994. This is the one. This is the same one. Introspection, and this is important. One wouldn't learn unless one investigated and admitted the failures. There's something which you might know. There's a feeling, a random empirical feeling that every 3 decades, every 30 years there's a major bridge disaster in the world. There were 3 of them, 4 of them that occurred within a span of 5-6 years. The famous King's Bridge collapse, then the Koblenz Bridge in Germany, then Yarra Bridge in Australia, then Milford Haven in Wales. Now these were failures that occurred, but because nobody swept them under the table, people analyzed and learned from them the lessons, which were then made part of the design specifications. Whereas in some countries, I will not name them, you already know which country I'm talking about, because of the elected people and because of the people who might like to hide their ignorance and whatever, they will sweep the whole thing under the table, and you will never learn from the accident that was made most innocently. Based on many a bridge disaster where there is lateral interference, particularly from particular political entities, with their eyes on the elections, and readiness by the owners' engineers to hide their ignorance and incompetence. There's always a way out. All it takes is to constitute a committee of the like-minded and procedurally kill the matter. Never learn from that. A competent engineering analysis from a purely pathological point of view and an uninhibited autopsy of the accident are the only ways to help the understanding rise from the ashes of that particular disaster. And it's because of that, thus the failure of Tacoma Bridge, which I was mentioning just now, did not condemn suspension bridges, but we learned about the aerodynamic instability and how to counter it. Instead, simple aerodynamic stability measures found to beat the bridge flutter problem have paved the way for bigger and more elegant suspension bridges. King's Bridge collapse, I was mentioning to you about, due to brittle fracture. In very cold atmosphere, steel can crack off because of brittleness. King's Bridge failure due to brittle fracture did not mean that the welding of steel box girders was banned. It only outlined the need for the right welding techniques to be made available for the bridges of this sort. And likewise, the series of box girder failures of 1970s could not lead to the conclusion that there was anything fundamentally wrong with the thin plate structures. You see, concrete bridge decks, which are boxes, they do not suffer so much from warping and distortion, but the steel boxes do because they are thin-walled structures. To understand distortion and warping, you have to understand, you have to analyze, you have to use the second-order theory, you have to go back to the basics, you have to go back to the differential equations. If you don't do that, you don't learn from it. The second order, i.e. the buckling analysis of instability of thin plates due to geometric imperfections, only earned the design attention that was previously lacking. So it became a part of the design code. Few, if any, of the failures became inevitable merely through the inexactitude of available methods of computing stresses. You can compute stresses, you cannot measure stresses. It would be an illusion to suppose that greater perfection in such methods and a bigger pile of computer printouts, which I'm afraid today's designers do, of itself will reduce the risk of accident. Just because you have a big pile of computer printout doesn't mean a thing. Sound design is achieved above all by the wisdom and judgment with which the designer applies his results with practice-based intuition, not by mere computation. Great courage and judgment are demanded of the inquirer, as he has a task which requires freedom from bias, while at the same time demanding a definite opinion. Originality comes out of understanding, and understanding comes out of relentless practice, not from mere talking. Good judgment comes out of experience, and experience often comes out of bad judgment. The great Navier. In 1820, he opted, in opting for classical suspension system, he condemned the cable state solution, which is today's rage. But that was the level of understanding of the great mind then. He was a great, great analyst. It remained that way until 118 years later, in 1938, the master analyst Dishinga, he developed a suspension system which was actually a combination of cable stayed and classical suspension bridge systems. Then started the beginning of cable stayed structures, because somebody like Dishinga came forward and showed us how. Now you can have, basically, if I can touch it again, I'm afraid of your pointer. Initially, no, it won't work, is it? These pointers are all disappointing. Can it? No. Anyway, you can see initially, I mean, this is, I want time, I can't do in 50 minutes and 1 hour and 2 hours, 4 hours minimum. Because then you will get the taste, the flavor of what I have to talk to you. It's a lifetime thing that I'm talking to you. It is thought that the cable stayed bridges have been built only, began to be built only recently, just 25 years ago, which is nonsense. The first one was done by Riccardo Morandi. I worked under him for 2 years, Jew. Difficult to get money from. But if you sat in his presence, he would radiate understanding into your thick head. He was so great, Italian. He is the first one, 1950s, he built the one at top. I'll show you his actual bridge, but he was essentially single cable and a thick beam system. Later, people understood they had multi-cables, and obviously the pickup points are so many more, the thickness of the beam system becomes lesser. Then came the multiple. So some is fan-shaped cable system, some will be I'll show you those. This is how the development took place, but he was the first one. In fact, some people dispute that, because Denmark of Sweden also built a similar bridge around that time. This is a cable in harp shape. Some people like it, some don't, but it's much easier to change, if you have to change the suspension system, if you have to replace some of the stays, this is the easier one, not the one which is fan type, because they are so congested at the very top. This is the fan type. Now this is the hybrid, which is a part of cable, part of fan and part of harp, both. So you can change, you can replace the stays as well as still try to retain a little more beauty of the fan system. Then this is the famous Leonhardt's family of unsymmetrical cable stayed bridges, which is beginning with this, you can see that. Some with fan, some with harp, some with hybrid. I'll show you the actual ones. One of the best ones is, it's a very complicated bridge, this one, Breton, over the Seine, near Paris. 143 meters, 320 meters. I mean, the central span is over 1,000 feet. But it looks a beauty. You look at it, you just fall on your knees in silent salutation to somebody's understanding. That is this bridge. This is our own in Calcutta. We took years and decades, and there were discussions and everybody moving up and down and everybody claiming, nobody knowing. Ultimately it was, initially it was designed by Randall Palmer and Tutton of England. Then somebody raised doubts, it was given to Lua, L-U-A, Leonhard und andere, consultants from Germany. They found all the faults because the Germans and the English, you know that they are the greatest enemies. Then it was given to Lua and checked by the other party. And ultimately it was built. Nothing very great about it. This is the famous lambda-shaped towers in the Rhine family of bridges Flehe by Leonhardt. This is an old one, Coatzacoalcos in Mexico. Very beautiful if you look at it in person at night with the lighting system. The great Professor Leonhardt hypothecated way back in he is no more, he's dead, in his 1972 IABSE paper that for spans of 750 meters to 1500 meters, the cable stayed system was technically and economically superior to the classical suspension system. And you know, if Fritz Leonhardt makes that statement, you just don't question. Especially with regard to aerodynamic stability, but not for railway bridges because of the impact, because of the vibration. This is that Professor Leonhardt. The use of A-form pylons for cable-stayed bridges with corresponding inclination of planes of cable, because if it's a single pylon and you have two planes of cable systems to pick up the deck, you have to have even number of, you don't have to have, but this is generally the practice, you have even number of traffic lanes. But if it's an odd number of traffic lanes, there is only one single plane in the center. I'll show you that. This is both sides. This is the center. High cable stresses to ensure favorable stiffness ratios on flat aerodynamically shaped aerofoil deck sections with sharp wind noses are now the order of the day. The great Stussy again remarked in his IIBSE Symposium on Concepts of Safety of Structures, London 1969, that the scientific period of design was introduced by Louis Navier way back in 1785-1836. The same old man, Navier, great man, who provided the transition to scientifically based construction with his principal work titled Résumé de l'Écan, 1826, and thereby fundamentally created the applied science of statics. This is too good. I wish more people had come. You won't read this in the books. I'm really not very happy. I wanted to see many more people. And you know, I shouldn't be saying it because this is a place where I belong. Elsewhere, I charge 1 lakh for a 2-hour lecture, believe it or not. That might put some sense into those who haven't come. The great Navier gave these lessons. He was a great teacher too. The great Navier gave these lessons on the application of mechanics in the establishment of construction and machines. This is a exact English translation of his French. So I don't want to touch that. I just translated it as is. The great Navier gave these lessons on the application of mechanics in the establishment of construction and of machines. This is translation. He gave this at the Royal School of Bridges and Roads. The French is L'École Royale, whatever. And some of his students were to emerge as eminent groundbreaking engineers in future years. Eminent groundbreaking. After Navier, the development of engineering design was fostered by very many pioneers like those groundbreaking great men, like Karl Kuhlmann, Otto Mohr, Friedrich Engesser, to name just a few. And the glorious history of Roman concrete. We graduated from steel, we're now coming towards concrete. This was used to build such famous structures as the Pantheon in Greece, which is more well known. Animal blood was used for some time in their earlier days for mixing concrete. Some details of history of civil engineering are bizarre, if not gruesome. But the art almost went into oblivion until the grand revival in the recent times marked by the entry of Portland cement into the scene. With the progress of Portland cement concrete, it came to be used in bridges as substitute for stone initially. Concrete was first used for a bridge of 13.5 meter span across a canal in France in 1840. The Frenchman Lambeau, he built a boat 3.3 meters long. His famous rowboat, 3.3 meters long, made by, and this is again translation from French, made by plastering Roquefort cement on skeleton network of iron and wire. You will understand the sense, but it's an exact translation. This was followed by his English patent in 1885. You're welcome, but ladies, I am addressing you, you're welcome, but I don't like coming late. If you can't, then don't come. This is not a picnic. Coisin, another great man, and another Frenchman, took out a patent at about the same time on the structural use of reinforced concrete. Now, you will see how many people were interacting for the development of structural concrete. In 1855, Wilkinson, a Britisher, he secured in England a patent for concrete arch floor reinforced with tie bars. This is his exact words, which was discussed by no less than Fairbairn in his celebrated book in 1864. Then came Moynier. Moynier's first patent was taken 3 years later. It's all in the race for structural concrete. That's why I said a brief history of development of bridges and structural concrete. Now, just see, Wilkinson, then Fairbairn, then Moynier, and first Coisin. Then many others about this time took patents on reinforced concrete in one form or another in various lands. Thus, in the 19th century, which is 1800 somethings, reinforced concrete and consequently bridges were still in the empirical period of patents. The search for a basis of rational concrete structure design, not structural design, try and understand that, began in the last part of the 19th century itself. Thaddeus Hyatt is credited to be the first to establish a basis of analysis of stress in reinforced concrete. He made absolutely visionary statements that you take for granted today. He stated that the principle of bond, that the reinforcement must be able to resist sufficient tensile stresses to balance the compressive stresses in concrete, which you don't even think about now. But this was one of the fundamental, groundbreaking statements of a visionary then. And then see what happened after that. Hyatt was an American lawyer. He was not an engineer. By education, he was a lawyer, but an inventor by nature, and was later to take patents on deformed bars, what we call tor steel in this country, I think. He published it is FE 500 now? Here? FE 500 now? Yeah. He published his 28-page book on the use of Portland cement concrete combined with iron in 1877, which may have antedated the design principles to emerge by good 2 decades. Then came another great man, Coisin, a German mastermind, a garment architect sitting in Berlin, was commissioned to what? This is from German, translation exact. He was commissioned to deduce the methods of computation of reinforced concrete sections, not analysis. This is pure design. And he published his design rules, design, not analysis, rules in 1886. Coisin's idea on elastic design were printed 2 years later. Inelastic behavior theories for design of reinforced concrete or structural concrete sections, which were to be rejected rather irrationally later, appeared way back in 1898. We're talking of load factor design today. He did it in 1898, but that was unceremoniously rejected by those who thought they knew better. In 1909, the Joint Code of American Concrete Institute, American Society of Civil Engineers, and certain other professional bodies in the U.S. interested in reinforced concrete made its grand entry, the Joint Code. The French Commission on Reinforced Concrete had formulated its design rules way back in 1906. The visionary Abrams did again something which today we don't even think about, but that was a great masterly step then, and we are ever so thankful for that. Abrams, he gave us the well-known correlation of water-cement ratio with concrete strength, and he wrote way back in 1919, more than a century ago, right? Almost 2 centuries now. That use only the smallest quantity of mixing water that will produce a plastic workable concrete. No effect, no problems now, no sweat. but it was not known. That's a big step in the history of development of structural concrete. And yet another historic pronouncement back then. With careful control of water and proportioning, attention was focused on workability, placement and compaction. Then came the wonderful Monsieur Freycinet, the Frenchman. We'll talk about him in a few minutes. He proposed back then compacting concrete by vibration, way back in 1917, a yet another historic development. And you know these vibrators that are used for mixing concrete, I'm sure you know how many impulses per second? Think about it. And that he said in 1917. Just think about how many vibration impulses per second. And then came the improvement of composition and in fineness of grinding of cement. Finer the cement, the grinding is perfect. Then the smaller the particle size, higher the heat of hydration, better the strength. But controls had to be tight. This actually increased the strength, and this was a historic development in the business of structural concrete for high-strength structures, high-strength concrete structures. In Europe, they used mild steel like we used. Americans preferred it deformed, tall steel. The designers had chained themselves universally to a low permissible stress of 1250 kilograms per centimeter square, and the bogey of cracking and corrosion made higher strength and reinforcement almost a taboo. They wouldn't let you. Concrete and bridge engineering have come a long way since, at least in some ways. Precasting techniques using spine segments and even placing bearings at the bottom of the piers, not at the top of the piers, to cut the majority of moments because of the lever arm reduction. An early example, 700-meter pre-stressed concrete hammersmith, we did this in London, then is this. This is a spine box section with cantilever plates. And you can see I can't use it. This is a bogus thing. It doesn't work. I knew this wouldn't. It never works anywhere. You can see the bearings are at the bottom of the pier. So the vertical lever arm between the horizontal forces that are transmitted at the bearing level up down to the soffit of the foundation is a very small lever arm. Moments are cut out. But the construction is difficult to hold the pier against any toppling. That's why this is not a very popular method. And this is the blow-up of its segments of superstructure, and so everything is precast. Everything is precast. Then we had the other example, this is in Manchester, Mancunian Way flyover. Not precast, cast in situ, but here it is. Here it is. Then this is Al Khalij Viaduct in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. You have to see the bridges in Saudi, you will understand how good those bridges are. Not by Saudis, these have been done by outsiders. But this is 2 kilometers long, snaking like this, called Caterpillar Bridge. Now, there was no need for cantilever construction, the method by which this was built. You can see why the soffit of the bridge, soffit of the superstructure is only 5.5 meters above the ground. Nobody, you have to be foolish to do this. But one of the sheikhs had gone to Europe, he saw a construction that looked like that, and he insisted, he said, I want a construction like this. We said, yes, why not? It was a laboratory exercise, we were paid very heavily, we did something we would never do, and that was this. And this bridge, how it looks at night, there is no pier. The superstructure literally sits directly on the bearings and the footings, because there was no need for it. There is no height, but we had to do it. But the beauty and the difficult thing about this is the cross-section of the superstructure, it's two parallel boxes going snaking around, is a hyperbolic paraboloid, longitudinally as well as transversely. No 5 square meters of shuttering could repeat from one place to the other. You can imagine how costly this stupid exercise was. But he wanted it, so he got it. We got our money, he got his bridge. Flyovers have also been built totally using precast elements. A very quick one. And here's an abutment which is built out of precast elements. They are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're all organized here. If we had more time, because he has to go. These are the steps, and each individual precast piece, how it is built up like a mechano set. Precast abutments and wing walls. Then you can do a bridge like this, everything is precast, you can see that. The pre-stressed concrete sheet pile, abutments and wing walls, pre-stressed concrete piling pair, reinforced concrete abutments and wing walls, everything is that, precast, fully, you can see you can feel it, see it straight away. The big break in the art of reinforcing the concrete came with the introduction of pre-stressing. The idea of pre-stressing, conceived and put to practice in the 20th century, is the single biggest happening of the greatest significance in the entire history of construction on this planet. The man who first gave the form and content of this concept, the originator of pre-stressed concrete idea, was none other than the greatest of greats, the master designer, builder, genius of all time, Monsieur Eugène Freycinet, a Frenchman, the greatest civil engineering visionary of all time. Here is the man. A lesser man would have been contented with the fame and fortune he had in 1930s, because he was an inventor par excellence. He had money from all the patents in the world. But Freycinet was a man with a mission in his heart. His life carries an obvious message. His bitter struggles for 7 long years for the cause of pre-stressed concrete made history. If history has to have its heroes, here was one for the history of bridges. Freycinet took patents in 1928. He was out to sell the history's most exciting building material called pre-stressed concrete, but alas, with no buyers around. The same problem of mindset. He had reportedly told his friend, Saint Le Corbusier, he told him, he says, and translation again, both are French, he says, I reached my goal, now I am looking for around to see what I can use this discovery for, and who will accept it. How do I convince them? These are his desperate words. And he continues, he says, and in my opinion, the modern society needs it for all their housing and their highways. Way back then, 1930s. Corbusier was so touched by the sentiments of his friend as to conclude, and he said, into that one short sentence that Freycinet wrote to him, he says, he has crammed a vast wealth of poetry, lyricism, solidarity and concern for mankind and for the hearts of human beings. In 1960, the beam bridge, can we stop this fellow? It's a little, which switch is this? I don't want to touch them all. In 1960, a beam bridge, I don't know which one, I'm sorry, I would have done it, but I don't want to, don't switch off the computer. Oh, good, you have one. Thank you. In 1960, the beam bridges had already reached spans of up to 160 meters. And master engineer Ricardo Morandi, I was telling you about, the great, you could just sit in his company and by radiation he would transmit his knowledge to you. He was one of the greatest, but very, very mean man. He told me, he used to tell that to everybody else, if we wanted more salary, which we did need, no, if you work with me for 2 years, that will last you a lifetime. You just need to survive, that's it. And that was 100% true. And you look at this mastermind then, the first person who did the cable-stayed bridge way back then, and across the Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela. Bridge across Lake Maracaibo, here it is, in Venezuela, and was under construction with spans of 235 meters each, about 800 feet, already using cable stays then. Here is the great man. Professor Ricard. These professors are professors who are practitioners more than teachers. They understand the ins and outs of what they are doing. This is his famous bridge across Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela. This is his famous, one unit, one element, Maracaibo view of the main span. You could see how the stresses would flow. The live load would be picked up by go to the beams, picked up by the stairs, onto the pylon, down into the foundation. Everything is simply supported. Not simply supported, but statically determined. This is his famous Morandi table. Same bridge, but very difficult for maintenance people. They have to look for cracks and distresses at 1 million angles and cross sections. But that was not, he did all the bridges across, in west of Italy along the coast. That's called the Sun Highway. That's called the Autostrada del Sole, the Sun Highway. There are first-class bridges in that. Each bridge is different than the other, and each bridge is more complicated than the other. Because it is coming from Morandi, nobody could question him. But these are, you can see them for a lifetime. You should go abroad. This morning we had 2 hour, 1.5 hour session. I don't know how many of you came, but that's where I was explaining quite a few things. Then, remember this, it's not the analysis that you start. You give me a problem, you straight away open your laptop and start. Don't do that, that's not the way practice is done. You have to conceive the idea. You have to draw sketches to scale. Then you have to transfer those sketches to the drawing board, make them and chisel them and chop them and cut them short here and there till it looks something and you can see the stresses flow. Then you start the analysis, then comes the design. And in so doing you have to fix the cross-sectional dimensions first. That doesn't come by you starting your laptop. Now this, why I'm saying this, now this one, I will first show you the next one. This is a bridge across, this is the Pirana bridge across Chaco Corrientes in Argentina. You just look at this bridge. But the designer who had to conceive it, this is how the conception started. You have to actually physically see the big books, big notebooks that they have. I have seen one in Madrid. There's a big bookshop. That's where Leonardo da Vinci's sketches, the big book containing the sketches, that book is about 1.5 meters by 2 meters. Nobody can lift it. And these are original sketches. You see them, you will drop dead. That is engineering, not starting with this calculator. You will then begin to realize how the conceptual structure and understanding commences. So this is what, I can't use your damn thing, this thing. This is how the conception started, and this is what he did. Just to transfer the idea that please, computer pile of your printout is useless and meaningless. You have to understand differently. 70s, the longest span of beams reached 230 meters in Japan. And for cable-stayed concrete bridges, designs had been made with about 300 meter spans then. Today we go up to 500 meters and even longer. But this is then, 1970. The achievements in building long-span bridges in pre-stressed concrete are too close to our times. That is like yesterday, not good old steel bridges of wrought iron and cast iron. So it is not easy to comment on the bridges that have come up in the same decades as we are living. So that's why I'm saying that the achievements in building long-span bridges in pre-stressed concrete are too close to our times to afford a historical perspective or comment. But the development of new landmarks in span, in form and construction technology is growing at a dizzy pace. Now you see, this is again Professor Christian Menn of Switzerland. This is the Ganter Bridge, Simplon Pass in Switzerland. If you look, now this is a picture taken against the sun. If you see the same bridge along the sun, this is how it looks. And imagine if you see these two fellows, this way or that way, when it is snow all around, you freeze. You just cannot do anything other than appreciate. And he's one of the greatest analysts of the day, Professor Christian. I don't know whether he's dead soon enough. I don't know when, but if at all. Then this is one of the latest, Miao. I used to call it Milao till I was corrected. It's pronounced, I'm told, as Miao Viaduct. This is between Barcelona, between Spain and France, but between Barcelona and Paris. Now see this very carefully. This is not a joke. This bridge is something superb, absolutely superb. This is across the motorway A75. Each span is over 1,000 feet, 2.5 kilometers long, and the pier height is taller than the Eiffel Tower. And I'll show you that. Now you begin to see what this bridge is. Now I'll show you a picture or two of this bridge during construction above the cloud line. Bridges is a great topic. Please take to it. This is once it was completed in daytime, and this is when it was taken at night time. The originator of construction in the free cantilever method, because if you have to cross bodies of water where you cannot raise the staging from bottom up, you have to do something else from top itself. So that's called the free cantilever construction method. The propounder is Professor Dr. Ulrich Finsterwalder. Yes, Professor Ulrich Finsterwalder, one of the greatest bridge builders of our times. Now, here is the great man. A later modification. Now he would do segments on both sides, pre-stress them together, again segments on both sides, pre-stress them together, and keep going outwards from the pier, do the same from the next pier till the two cantilevers would meet. But these were all cast in situ, cast in place segments. Somebody else came later, he did the same thing, but he converted the technology into using precast segments. And that was John Mueller, J-E-A-N, Jean Mueller, a disciple of Freycinet and Guillaume's school of thought. A later modification of this method in the cantilever construction with precast segments was introduced in '63 for the Choisy-le-Roi Bridge in Paris and Oloron Bridge on the French coast, I will show you, by a contractor, which was a contracting company. The consultant was STUP, S-T-U-P. It's an acronym. S stands for something, T for something, U for something. STUP Paris, which was owned by Freycinet. Freycinet was a great legend. He would give the problem and he would give you the solution. He wouldn't tell you how. And he wouldn't perhaps even know. But a great mathematician turned engineer turned mathematician named Yves Guillaume. He used to be with him all the 24 hours almost. He gave mathematical proof of everything that Freycinet propounded. And he married his daughter as well, because he was there for too long. Now, but the idea is not marrying the daughter, which you can. But the idea is, these are the making of the great minds. Please, this is not a lecture meant for just a lecture. You take it seriously. This is blood-curdling experience. This was Jean Mueller. I have said it somewhere, most famous Freycinet-Guillaume method. This one, I think it must follow. No, I must have said it somewhere. 63, and the name of the company was Campenan Bernard. Campenan Bernard, that's the French. Operating under the most famous Freycinet-Guillaume school of thought for bridge culture and thought. This was done by Jean Mueller, who is dead now, very recently, 3-4 years ago he died. This is his bridge. When he lectured on this in England in 1963-64, I attended his lecture. Now when you listen to people like these, you are transfixed, because they give you certain ideas which come into the codal domain maybe 2 decades later. Like, for instance, what is the creep loss difference between a cast in situ segmental construction and precast segmental construction, and the thickness of the joints, whether you should do mortar joints or whether you should do epoxy joints. Epoxy came later after this. This was mortar joints. And the deflection, you calculate in cantilever construction, as you build the cantilevers, they keep deflecting. Now you can't have a bridge like this. So you have to in advance pre-calculate the possible effect of creep in deflection and introduce those deflections in reverse. Okay, good night. Introduce those deflections in reverse. That's called the camber calculation. That even today computers have to be used in order to predict with the correct creep coefficient. What they did in '64 when there were no such knowings. That's when you listen to them, you get to know. Then this is the Felsnau Bridge in Bern. This is the great Åland Bridge in Sweden, cantilever construction. our own. No, this is the Eastern Schelde in Holland. This looks very massive, but mind you, each span is 300-footer. It looks massive because everything is so fat and big. Everything is precast. The piles are precast, the pile cap is precast, the inverted VPS are precast, the deck is precast. And you can see the effect of the double attack of chlorides and sulfates. You can see that through the stain marks. Each span is about 300-footer, 5 kilometers long. This is our own Karangal Setu. There are many. There are hundreds in India now. This is the Patna Bridge, which is now in very bad shape. It's not, I don't want to say anything because I was also associated with it through Gammons. This is my first really long bridge, 26-kilometer long, Bahrain-Qatar sea link. 26 kilometers, which had about 14 kilometers of 18 kilometers of bridges, and the rest was a number of man-made islands. Why islands? Because one, you needed the space for passport offices, administrative offices, etc., etc. And second, the depth of water was so low that it wouldn't be right to do a bridge, you had to do filling and embankment. Then there is the Orado Bridge, Japan. Lightweight aggregates can allow longer spans. These are things that we can go into. So in brief, even the recent history of development of bridges has proved to the hilt that Freycinet's 7 years of ordeal did not go in vain. Continuing efforts to expand its scope of application has led to growingly imaginative and futuristic forms of construction. Futuristic forms of construction. Now you hold your heart, I'm going to show you things that you would never imagine. That's a bridge taken through a building. They bought the 3 floors, insulated them, put the bridge through. This was later, the connection across, thanks to Priestess Country. This is a bridge, and where you see between one end of the bridge and the other end of the bridge you see water, that's where the navigation span is. So they wanted to put a navigation span across, but at a great height so that the ships of certain mast height would be able to go. Environmentalists rightly intervened. They said, no, we will not allow that, this, that and the other. And after a lot of discussion, this bridge goes down, becomes a tunnel, goes up, comes up at the other end, so that the navigation is through without the bridge, without that top span bridge. This is a bridge carrying river over a river. And as long as the depth of water in the bridge above is more than the draft required by the boat, you don't have to design the bridge for the weight of the boat, because the buoyancy takes care. Another one. Somebody is very busy. And now some of the most fascinating examples, now not too much, another maybe 10 minutes. Most fascinating examples of futuristic bridge architecture, the structures that can be considered a destination. You go to that bridge, you're not using the bridge for going from A to B. You are going to that bridge because you just want to be on that bridge and see the bridge. It's a destination. And these are some things. Not this one. The soaring bridges of engineers, today is one of the best, Santiago Calatrava, Spanish, is one of the most sought-after Spanish bridge architects today. His works are dynamic, reflecting our modern age. They also possess the uplifting harmony of sweeping curves and intricate shapes. His sundial bridge at Turtle Bay in the US is an interestingly shaped, somewhat futuristic bridge which doubles as a sundial. It was recently built near Redding, California. Now you can see a better shape of that here. In Delhi right now, something similar is under construction. But this costs 6 times the normal cost, normal bridge. But if you want to have a signature bridge, you pay through your nose. his Alamilo Bridge in Seville, Spain, the one I just showed you. Calatrava also applied his soaring spread wing style to the footbridges of Milwaukee Art Museum in the US. This is the Science City in Spain, at Seville in Spain. I'll show you this in greater detail. Although nothing really comes close to the city of arts and sciences that designed by, for Valencia, not the one I mentioned, for Spain, the culmination of his highly elegant style. You can see this. Look at the piers. They're just toothpicks ultimately. What is this? And then the buildings behind had to be redesigned in order to suit his curves. And you have to see this is one of the tourist spots. People go there, they're taken by the tourist agencies and they're given 2 hours to just look around. This is Calatrava. You just don't know where they start from, emanate from, where is the, you can see the load going down to almost a point. And what is the bearing pressure? You know, by the way, what is the bearing pressure under a lady's high heel? It is somewhat similar. It's the same as the pressure under an elephant's foot, because the diameter of that heel at the bottom is less than 6 1/4 inch. That's what happens, and he has done that. The double spiral bridge in Japan, which is this, the busy route, whatever, the winding down, etc., is this one. They had to, they were told not to cut a single tree. So they had to do the grade separation from bottom or the top by doing that without going through the hills and cutting the trees. Then this was copied by the Chinese. This is this bridge and Chinese is coming. That's that, yeah. Nampu Bridge with spiral approach. Similar spiral way in Huangpu River across South Dock in Shanghai. And then this same thing at night. Then the JK Bridge across the Paranova Lake, Brazil. This spiral bridge, there's not much in it, but here it is. Then some of the concepts, the futuristic concepts, they stretch beyond the boundaries of imagination. This is the South Korean bridge. You visit the bridge, you don't use the bridge to go elsewhere. And you reach the bridge by water taxis because the bridge contains everything. Theaters, museums, markets, libraries, everything. I don't have the pointer. What the heck shall I wanted to throw it away, this damn thing. This is the, you see those are the points where the water taxis take you to. And that's the bridge. And that's one of the shots of this. And this, it has got IT offices, museums, libraries, everything. Then here is a bridge with solar panels to generate energy. London Bridge, I'll show you that. London Bridge across, now this is an artist's impression, it's not been built yet, but it is something that tells you you can build vertical farms at bridge sites which will give you all the produce of the market, of the village to send to the market, which is this. Chetwood Architects, it was their proposal. Then the informal bridge city for Italy. Now this is something. A long portal bridge, disused now for traffic, but good enough for the loads from the residences. See? You have to, your address will be coordinates X, Y, Z. And then those afraid of heights would want to steer clear of the jazz studios, the city in a bridge concept modeled after the Ponte Vecchio in Florence, Italy. It was created for a contest that aims to identify a creative new use for a decommissioned highway between Salerno and Reggio Calabria in Italy. The proposal places a precarious new urban center onto existing infrastructure to not only provide amazing views but have an impact upon the ecology of the surrounding landmass. Now this one, this is Spence. No, this will never be built. The status of the project is unclear. They say completion date 2015, today is 2016. Then the Dubai thing. The architect here is Zoha Hadid. She's an Iraqi architect, settled in England, does excellent work, is world famous. She was commissioned as consultant for the Tokyo Olympics 2020, and she has given such beautiful sweeps of curves and full drawings and everything, but after 3-4 years into business, the Japanese cancelled her contract because they said it's impossible to build. Because that's the trouble with the architect. They just draw something. Then the poor structural designer has to worry about how to. And he makes all sorts of assumptions, solving a problem that didn't exist. So this is Zaha Hadid. And then this is the Dubai. This was designed by New York firm FX Fowle. Awe-inspiring concept forever, but the Sheikh Rashid bin Said Bridge is due for completion very soon. It will have, and hold your breath, it will have 12 passenger lanes, a dual rail track for Dubai's Metro Green Line, and a man-made island with an opera house, and will carry some 20,000 vehicles per hour. Then the solar wind concept. They say the bridge is always across a gap where there is enough wind, so why not generate the energy? That's how it is. Because large-scale wind power may necessitate putting turbines in unexpected places, including over rivers and valleys that are often wind corridors. So even if this particular design of a wind turbine bridge, which also has a grid of solar cells embedded on the surface of the road, isn't entirely realistic, it's an interesting concept. The designers say the bridge could power as many as 1,15,000 homes. Then the living bridge towers over the Seine across in Paris. Now here you really need XYZ, maybe including the fourth dimension, time. When will you reach there? The designer is Nicola Macci of Italy. The building is integrated with the Seine, becoming a new landmark and offering the historic center the development of the most varied programmatic elements, including recreational, cultural, residential, and performing spaces. The new bridge for the city is a living one. Then comes the Zaha Hadid, the one I was mentioning to you about. See the curves she has created, not her curves, but these are the curves she has created. Asymmetrical steel arches form a wave-like design which goes with the ambience of the sea waves emerging from cantilever road decks on either side, and in this design for Dubai's Sheikh Zayed Bridge by Zaha. Then the last 3 or 4 slides. The architect believes that the bridge is a part of the major 4-lane highway connecting Abu Dhabi Island with the mainland, and it will become a destination itself. It is currently under construction. Then comes this architect Sendwal, created an ecologically fresh multiple-use bridge for Amsterdam. It's only on paper at the moment. Latest, I don't know, the very latest. The primary materials of this bridge are wood, aluminium, and steel, so you can even use the surface of the bridge for art. Sendwal plays with different kinds of glass, which gives the bridge that futuristic ambience and also a fine view of the exterior. The structure is planned as a habitable one with narrow houses, modern buildings, a bike shop, a large mansion, and a garden. This very European bridge promotes merging of cultures and times, and here's the bridge. Another view. And the last one. It is therefore an undeniable professional responsibility of a good bridge engineer to know the culture and the subtle turning points that temper the development of the bridge craft, and then reflect in order to carry forward such a wonderful legacy. Thank you.
Session, if you have any questions, you can put up to Dr. Raina.
Make them simple.
Any questions? After a perfect presentation, it seems there's no question. So I'll request, sir. Raina Sahab, he's Professor Ranjay Pandey.
I've been looking for you. कैसे हैं आप? There is, I have a presentation which is about 300 slides. Only bridge performance, monitoring bridge performance I have right now with me. Complex means...
Everything is there, and you want to monitor the health of the bridge.
Not easy, not easy. That goes,
How do you model the stresses, for example?
that applies equally well to Riccardo Morani's bridges, which are very difficult to monitor. But then Riccardo Morani wants it, and that is done. It becomes a permanent headache for those who are looking after the bridge later. You're 100% right. But some of these later ones, futuristic ones, they are extremely difficult. They need a whole lifetime. But they are something very special. Now this is what I was begging of you fellows here. Please let me come and show my, because I am originated from here, you so-and-sos, you don't let me. Because ये कहाँ मिलेगा? मैं यही पीछे पड़ा था आपके, आज सुबह इनसे बात हुई, कहाँ, क्या नाम, सांगत, नहीं सांगत. Today he was all pani. नहीं, we'll issue a letter. I said, I don't care about your letter, but this has to be it. Don't bother me. No, he said at least 3 lectures per year. I said, no, it may be 0, it may be 50. Leave it to me. When I have time, I will ring up and I'll come. Because there are so many other issues, not the regular classroom things, that is already being done enough. I mean, things like climate change effect on the bridges. Now, this is not exactly a regular topic. Or accelerated construction of bridges, if possible, where possible, that. And quite a few other similar topics which are very special, very different. Things like even estimating the safe bearing capacity of soil under caissons, footings and piles. What we see generally and what we actually do in practice, there's a big difference. Now that, I want to lay it threadbare open in front of these youngsters so that they are ready to invade the market and tell them we know better. And whether that is better or not, that's my responsibility, but you have to give me that. So, bolo.
Any other question from anybody? Yeah, Rishpa.
What do you mean? What? I will try, if I understood you well, but I think I have understood what you want to say, not what you have said. The bridge has a foundation system, then has a substructure system, which is the piers and abutments, then has bearings, on which sits the superstructure. Now, piles, if it is piles, they can be precast and then driven, or you can have, sit down, please take your seat. Or they can be bored and cast in situ. You bore the hole, put the reinforcement, put bentonite to make sure that the walls don't cave in, and then pour the concrete. And you can have driven cast in situ, but precast is a pile made separately, turned upside down, but in the meantime you hold it, you design, you make sure that the reinforcement and the grade of concrete and the section properties are such that it can withstand the handling and launching, whatever. Piers, there are some piers which can be totally precast and simply placed. Not others can be cast in situ. But the superstructure systems can be fully cast in situ, can be partly cast in situ, partly precast, or almost entirely precast. Precast means if the span is so much, you build this up by 19 segments or n number of segments, which are all precast elsewhere, so that you gain on the time of construction and on the quality control, because while you're doing the foundations and substructure, these fellows can be precast in the precasting yard and then brought in place. But the accuracy has to be perfect, because you can't have a longer span than what you can provide on top. Quality control is far better because you do it in the yard, in the precasting yard under a roof, so the vagaries of the weather don't hurt you. But if you have to do it out in the open, then you are at the mercy of the elements. So that's where some places precast, some places casting. If I have made my point clear? Yes, sir.
Myself, Raina, final year civil engineering. I want to ask.
Final year civil engineering degree or master?
Submitted.
Good.
I want to ask a question. That innovation of airfoil in the design of the deck. Airfoil.
Aerofoil.
Aerofoil structure is used in aeroplanes.
Exactly. Exactly.
To produce the lift.
To produce the lift as well as to break the wind without causing eddies.
Yeah.
That's exactly the reason why we want to do the same thing in the cross section of the suspension deck, which is subjected to heavy winds. So whether that moves and the wind cuts, or the wind moves and she is standing there and cuts, whichever way, the section is aerofoil. In case of water, it is hydrofoil.
Yeah.
It basically is something that cuts through without creating the eddies.
So the eddies are reduced, but the lift which is produced on the deck has to be counteracted by some force.
That will be it will be so designed that the lift is minimal because the cross section has to be designed accordingly, but then the superstructures in certain cases are tied down by vertical prestress to counter the lift. Yes, sir. The ladies there were two of them who came very late.
Join me.
Come on. No, don't give us those very nice smiles. They're very good, but please ask a question. No, but you must ask, for God's sake, even if you make a mistake. I have made more mistakes that you can think of. You make them so that something is clarified. Bolo. Sorry?
Vertical bridge. She wants some comment on vertical bridge.
Which vertical bridge?
कहीं पे vertical दिखा ना?
Oh, you mean the farm, vertical farms?
आगे आ जाओ, आगे आ जाओ।
थोड़ा आगे आके बोलो।
Come forward.
यार जोर से बोलो, पता नहीं वहाँ जब तक इनवाइट नहीं करता तब बोलना नहीं, क्या बात क्या है? इधर आइए, सामने बैठ के जोर से चिल्लाइए। You are capable, I know that. घर पे तो चिल्लाते होगे ना? हाँ, बोलो। You mean the vertical farm? हाँ. It is basically, it's an artistic impression saying that if we have limitations of space and what little space we have, the environmentalists may not allow us to unnecessarily go horizontal. So we'll create, along with the bridge, we have system of suspension which will be developed into a vertical farm so that you can, there are vertical farms even for flowers these days. The flowers are grown vertically along the wall from top down, all the way from 10th floor. So you can raise the flowers without having to dig the ground.
Bridge is usually built to connect two places. So how is this bridge?
The bridge is connecting two places, but the system of superstructure is such that you so devise the superstructure that you also have what I just said, the farm. Likewise, you have a bridge connecting A to B, but you also saw a series of multi-storied a series of floors on top. So that is in addition to joining the A and B. Bolo, yaar, kuch hai? You are letting me out so cheap, so easily. I thought you would kill me. हाँ बोलो. Good evening to you.
Final year mining engineering.
जी.
So I wanted to know that how you make this signature bridges earthquake and seismic proof.
First of all, there is nothing which is earthquake proof. It is earthquake resistant. Like a watch, it is never waterproof. They call it waterproof, they're fooling you. This is water resistant. Likewise, you create structures which are earthquake resistant up to the extent that you decide to design it for. Should there be an earthquake heavier than that, it is better that once in a while, 1 in 1,000 times, one bridge fell rather than design all the 1,000 bridges for that higher value. Now you said, how do you make it? But do you mean, how do you make wind? I mean, the earthquake gives you additional, sorry, come.
What is the system involved in it for checking the?
Right, please have your seat. Earthquake is an agency that is, earthquake is something that causes the flutter, that causes the mass to move, vibrate. So there is oscillation, there is amplitude. Now, whatever you decide to design it for, which is earthquake resistant to that level, not earthquake proof. You got my point? So as long as you have defined the magnitude of the acceleration, both horizontal and vertical, it is horizontal fellow is accompanied by almost 50% value in magnitude, vertically up and down, up or down. So once you have got the magnitude, you have got the additional overturning moments and additional up and down forces. You include them in the base pressure calculations and in the structural design when you do the section design for checking the stresses. It's only a question of deciding how much for. After this recent earthquake in Nepal, things have changed a lot. What used to be designed for 0.1 gravity is now 0.27 gravity. That's 0.17 extra on 0.1.
But you also need materials which can damp out these
You
vibrations
use,
as fast as possible.
right, as fast as possible. I'll tell you two things on that. If you haven't, or if you have those materials, which I will talk in a minute about, this only goes to increase the section sizes and the base pressure, to control the base pressures and the section stresses. Second, you use dampeners. For instance, at Imperial College, the soil mechanics laboratory is on the 7th floor, top floor. And that is sitting on a series of springs because they can't afford to be bothered by vibration of anything else because their long-term experiments will go fat. So they rest them on neoprene bearings sitting on springs so that whatever may happen elsewhere, she is not distracted. So dampeners plus the increased design sections. Bas? Bolo yaar, kuch to bolo. Yeah, you should be more people, please. Next time I will not. Because this, if you don't like it, throw me out of the window, I'll accept it. But if you like it, I want a full hall because you won't get it in a book, for God's sake. It's an opportunity.
So next time when you come,
No, I'm not forcing it on you, but it's only for you fellows. I don't even have to come if you like. But if you're getting it, as I said again, it looks cheap when I say it second time. I charge a lot of fees for the same thing outside. Here, if you get it free, don't misunderstand, don't underestimate it. Yes, go ahead, shoot. Huh? Sorry, come again?
final year civil engineering.
Okay, you speak with an air gap in between words, that'll be easier.
You told about one bridge which you told is analogous to Ladies' Hill.
No, I didn't say that. I said the pier of that bridge designed by Calatrava, if you go and physically see it, we were there last year also, it's a full bridge. It's a pedestrian bridge, of course. The entire, it's all curves. And this pier that comes out of the superstructure and comes like this and goes to a very, very small, thin cross section, which directly sits through the bearing on the substructure. And what I said is that the pressure under a lady's heel, even if you took the average weight of the lady as 50 kilograms, and at the time she takes a step, entire load comes on one heel. If the diameter is 6 mm, see the pressure. And then see the pressure on an elephant's foot, taking the elephant to be 1,000 kilos.
So then how it is relieved that much stress, that amount of stress?
What do you mean relieved? You have to design it for that. If the lady walks across, either she will sink along with it, or else she will do that, and the ground will be stable. If she doesn't, she goes in. The bridge goes in. But the designer looks at the bearing capacity, decides the section, designs the section to withstand the pressure. One is the applied pressure, second is the capacity. Bearing capacity is from bottom, applied is from top. This has to be less than capacity.
Any more question? It's a great honor for me as Dean Resource and Alumni to welcome very visionary alumnus who graduated from this place in the year that I was born in.
You too?
I was born
Yeah, you too, because there is somebody else also born the same year.
in 1961. Yeah.
My son is older than me, you see, what can I do?
No, yes. And you have a great voice, you have great intellect to impress us. We knew that bridges are there to connect two places A and B, and that is how newer cultures also emerge. And today we have seen a journey whereby we find that how monumental tourist spotlight places can be created when bridges are there. As we told in the beginning itself, that you are likely to have more interaction with us, and we would really be interested in coming across many such adventurous and interesting lectures in which possibly we will be talking about how do you instrument the bridges with probes, etc., so that you can find out where the physical anomalies that produce the faults that creep in, various types of failures that arise, and how does one look at the errors, that is discrepancies between the theoretically correct values and the actually obtained values in the failures, etc., do arise. Similarly, the possibilities of looking at the availabilities when we talk about the repairable situations of the bridges, when one tries and minimizes the mean time to repair, other possible characteristics, bringing in safety and availability as a design motto, where we don't try to talk about functionalities, and when we instrument with the probes, there is a possibility of weighing the vehicles that are moving on the bridge on the nose itself, so that one can identify what is the type of stress, etc., that is being experienced by the bridge when it is in operation. So there are so many things that Professor Raina can talk about, and in this age he is a wonderful orator, has a great teacher-like language. So we all felt like students who are enjoying the journey that he was proposing to us. There are so many things that come under the analysis, something that we have studied in system sciences, like there could be perturbation theory that could be a great help in studying that when a small difficulty occurs in large structures and systems, how the entire behavior of the aggregate experiences changes in times to come. Similarly, the various Monte Carlo methods and randomized algorithms, etc., that may be of use in designing and modeling such large structures and bridges. We look forward to having more such lectures from you, Professor Raina. And I actually, when I was coming to this place, I was wondering how interesting it could be for me, because I don't come from civil engineering background, but let me tell you that I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I think that anybody who doesn't come from civil engineering similarly enjoyed it thoroughly, the whole lecture that we had. I would request now Honorable Professor Dhananjay Pandey to kindly felicitate Professor V.K. Raina on behalf of the Institute.
I didn't know that. It's a great opportunity. I enjoyed every word of it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. वही तो मैं आपसे टेलीफोन पे कितनी बार कहा, कितनी बार कहा।
Okay, they want us to make it a photo. This is a token of.
This is. Yes, why not?
This way.
This is superb.
It's going on video.
Yes.
Suppose
You told me now. You told me now.
Yeah.
You should have told me earlier. I would have avoided the
Pakistan.
excuses.
At least the-
Pakistan.
It was the right time to go for it. Okay, thank you.
I won't go to Pakistan again.
देखो सैनिक का
Thank you.
नेपाल वाला कल 10 बजे
क्या?
यहीं 10 बजे नेपाल वाला जो आज का
आप ही
अनाउंस स्पीच कल 10 बजे इसी जगह
There will be another talk to be delivered by Professor Raina tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the same hall here on Nepal, as he said. It is already notified, but the place is this place only, at 10 a.m. tomorrow in this Gopal Tripathi auditorium itself. And head civil engineering may kindly ask, yes, the students to be around. Does he announce here or in the department?
Same place.
Okay, the same place will be there.
But what about the classes and all that? These some of
And let me tell that institute lecture under the institute lecture series is an honor bestowed on the person who delivers the lecture. And I would be very right in saying that in honoring Professor V.K. Raina, we have honored a great alumnus of our institute who has brought glory to the institute and to the profession. Thank you very much for being here. I would record sincere thanks on behalf of the institute to Professor Ramji Agrawal, who is chairman of our Banaras Alumni Association. It is a new association in the city. Who has spared time to come. The students obviously who need it. ये मुझे बहुत बाद में समझ में आया, पहले हम लोग भी क्लास में उन विद्यार्थियों को डांटते थे जो बेचारे क्लास आए हैं कि बहुत कम लोग आए हैं, जो नहीं आए तो आराम कर रहे हैं, तो उनको क्या डांटना जो बेचारे आए हैं. You are very good people that you have come. Those who could not come, ask them to come tomorrow, because we all have experienced that it is a great treat to listen to Professor Raina. So please convey this message to everybody so that everybody joins. I would request Professor Deven Mohan, head of the Civil Engineering Department, to make necessary announcement for the purpose. Yeah, please.
you bunk your class. Like you sometimes do, don't you? Yeah, but that's only civil engineering. I mean others also, because they're...
So he can announce on behalf of the department.
Anybody else, because Nepal earthquake and what has happened to... I'll give you an example. I'll show you how we restored 3 bridges. Okay. How we destroyed the active earth pressure to 0. In an abutment, main design criteria is the overturning effect on account of the backfill earth pressure. How that was zeroed down. Vagara, vagara. It's a lot. Tomorrow we'll see.
So undoubtedly, it was an experience, a rare experience. Thank you, sir, for all that. There was a notification according to the program which was passed on to me by the members of the Institute lecture series that today's lecture at 4:30 p.m. will focus on Nepal earthquake and related disaster mitigation measures and others. But this itself has been a great presentation, and according to the Honorable Director's directives, as told to me right now, the classes in Civil Engineering Department for 2 hours only, from 10 to 12, will be suspended and your attendance has to be here. Yes, afterwards, after lunch, the classes will be held as scheduled, laboratory will be held as scheduled. It's not suspended for whole day. Please note, only 10 to 12 a.m. tomorrow, that is on January 5, 2016. Mechanical, sir is here, he will announce mechanical engineering, but I fear, if all of them really report, will this hall be able to accommodate?
Don't worry about that. Yes, there are places where they put CCTV in the 2nd hall and 3rd hall outside.
Let that situation come.
Okay, so head mechanical, Professor Anil Kumar Agrawal ji here. He will make necessary announcement for mechanical. Head mining, I think Sarma ji may say something, because head mining, Professor Arif Jamal is not here. So, okay, civil engineering classes to be held here. This is just change of venue to be held here. Please listen. from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Lunch after our classes will be held as scheduled in Civil Engineering Department, respective venues.
Kindly send a mail, please.
No, sir, it's announced. Please convey, please.
This is announced to those who have come. Those who
Sir.
have not come, एक mail भेज देंगे तो ठीक है.
Sir, it's enough, I think. You please convey this to all your friends. I shall see if that can be done, but please convey to all your friends. It will be, it may be a rare type of experience once again, being delivered by Professor V.K. Raina. And thanks a lot, sir, once again for all the efforts that you have taken. Thanks.